And that's exactly what we're seeing. Over the past 4 months, we've created an average of 350,000 jobs a month. That's down from the 450,000 jobs a month prior to the prior 4 months, and down from the 600,000 jobs a month to the 4 months before that. The pace of job growth is cooling while still powering our recovery forward. Wage growth for workers remains solid, down from the historic high pace months ago, but still growing for workers who deserve a raise. And this is the progress we need to see. In the short term, transition to more stable growth that continues to deliver for workers and families while bringing...
Here is a ton of good news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSI and SSDI. There is a huge update on the next wave of stimulus checks. Officials have announced that there is a new deadline to claim any available stimulus money. And if you meet these eligibility requirements, you can actually receive a check up to $800. So there are several stimulus bills that have been proposed in Congress, and if you are a resident of Colorado, the good news is that there is an extra financial boost that may be on the horizon. A handful of other states are currently offering more stimulus money to residents. Millions of Colorado residents will be eligible for a tax refund this summer, with payments worth $400 for individual filers and $800 for joint filers. The goal of this program is to help provide some inflation relief for people in Colorado, and it may be a big help for people who are struggling due to record high inflation. And about 3.1 million Colorado residents will be eligible to receive this tax rebate. In order to qualify, you have to be a full-time resident of Colorado with a residence in the state. You must also live in Colorado for at least half of the year. Eligibility will be determined by your 2021 tax return, which must be filed by May 31st in order to qualify. You can expect to receive your payment in the mail in August or September. And guys, last year California passed 2 stimulus packages. The first Golden State stimulus and the second Golden State stimulus. That included new stimulus checks for state residents who qualify. The purpose of these programs is to support low and middle income Californians and provide help for those facing hardships. The California residents who qualify for payments under the first Golden State stimulus package will actually receive payments worth up to either $600 for individual filers or $1,200 for joint filers. Residents who qualify for the second round of payments will receive up to $1,100. However, some people may receive lower payments for the second stimulus check. You have to be a resident of California who earns less than $75,000 a year in order to qualify. Eligibility will be determined by last year's tax return, and payments will be issued automatically. Another round of payments will be issued in June. The state of Delaware will also be issuing a tax rebate to residents who qualify. The goal of this one-time direct payment is to help residents cover the rising cost of gas, groceries, and other essentials, the prices of which have skyrocketed in recent months due to inflation. Delaware residents who qualify will receive up to $600, $300 per individual filer, or $600 for joint filers. Delaware residents who filed tax returns in 2020 are eligible to receive this one-time payment, as are residents who did not earn enough to file their taxes for the year. Residents who filed tax returns in 2020 will be first in line to receive their $300 checks, as eligibility will be determined by the information that's on your tax return. Checks will be issued to Delaware residents whose tax information is on file starting this month, and 2 more rounds of payments will be followed. Indiana residents will also be eligible for extra money, stimulus money that is, via tax rebates. These payments will be worth a maximum of $125 per individual filer or $250 per joint filer. And residents whose bank information is on file with the state may receive their payments as early as this month. Unlike some of the other state stimulus programs, Indiana's tax rebate will not be capped at a certain income level. Any person who filed tax in the state of Indiana before January 3rd or this year will be eligible for the one-time payment. Indiana is going to be using information from your 2021 tax return to determine eligibility, everybody.
I just think there's a bifurcation in the consumer. Obviously the low end's getting hurt more by rising oil. You're seeing some signs that housing's rolling over. Clearly the economic data have peaked and rolled over from the highs. I think that's obvious. I think you're seeing a number of companies, even last week and the week before, Walmart, Target, talking about expenses and costs. So I think there'll be a bifurcated consumer where the high end can handle higher prices more than the low end, and you're seeing that even on the tech front too. Look, it's probably started, Scott, with Netflix, right? People don't need 9 streaming services, so you're seeing some slowdown in some of the spend we saw during the depths of COVID, and maybe over-optimism about those companies continuing to do that. But I honestly think Microsoft's a little different, so I'll take that one separately. But generally, I'd say things are fine, just not as good as they were.
Yeah. The FunStrat technician Mark Newton told me yesterday in overtime he thought the lows of the year were in. You buy that? You believe that?
I think it's possible. I mean, technical guys are always better than I am at two-week trading calls, so I'll defer to the experts. But I look out and I think corporate earnings probably grow 6% this year. I think there's a lot of stock buybacks. Maybe you get 2% net buyback. You got a dividend of 1.5. I think that cocktail tells me 6 to 8% total return for equity markets on a 12-month forward view is a reasonable framework. The thing that I'm really excited about, though, when I look at this week and last week is just underneath that, how many opportunities for stock picking are forming. One of the things that's been really hard in the last several years when you just get interest rates going down is really picking winners from losers, right? And now there's just so many relative opportunities. So I think if you're a stock picker, the second half of 2022 is going to be really a good time for you to long and short ideas and generate spread.
I'll talk about some of your picks in a moment, but what about this move that we're making back towards 3% on the 10-year, as Mike Santoli was noting? I think we're 295 as we go into the weekend here. Can we handle going back above 3% again, and even if we approach the prior high?
I think if the 10-year yield backs up because people think growth is going to be better, that's probably a net positive for equities and risk-taking. If people start worrying about accelerating inflation again, and that's what's correlating it, probably not. But to me, while inflation will probably be higher in the second half this year and the first half of next year versus any kind of recent history, I think inflation has probably peaked. And I think that's probably the key. In order for the market to really go up, you probably need a directionally dovish Fed, as you and I have talked about. I think that's possible, but not likely in the near term.
Yeah, well,
Ernst's staff is still here, but they might share that with her if they are. And another question that I would have is while EPA was working on the mercury and air toxics rules, or we call the MATS rule, I seem to remember some of my colleagues holding up a poster talking about a train wreck. And there's a train wreck that would happen if EPA were ever to finalize that rule. The train wreck alluded to concern that if the mercury and air toxics rule were made final, it would have a role. We would end up with having rolling brownouts and blackouts, and electricity prices would be astronomical. You may remember that too. My question about blackouts or brownouts didn't happen due to the mercury and air toxics rule. Is that correct? Didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
Yeah. Didn't every utility in the country meet the standards on time and under budget, and energy prices went down, not up?
Yes.
I thought so. And aren't the same utility groups that fought you then endorsing you today?
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, one of the things that we did when we were putting the mercury and air toxic standards together is consult extensively with the utilities, with the states, with the utility regulators, and with the independent system operators. And we took special care to make sure that the utilities could comply on time with the standards while ensuring reliability.
All right. How did the United Mine Workers end up supporting your nomination?
I cannot speak for them, but I believe that what they said in support of my nomination was that they found that I was willing to engage.
Bring inflation down. Long term, the economy built on a firmer foundation. There's still a lot of work to do. We're building a different economy than before. A better one, a stronger one. Not trickle down economy. That never helped my family very much. Trickle down. This is an economy built on building from the middle out and the bottom up, not from the top down. And when that happens, everyone does well. The poor have a ladder up, the middle class do well, and the wealthy do very well. They're not hurt at all. That's an economic vision I offered to America when I ran, and I'm pushing it. And that's what I want to talk about today, and how we have our Republican colleagues have a very different view. And I know many of you are probably Republicans, but many of my Republican friends are basically arguing that good news for the economy is bad news for America. As if they're rooting for fewer jobs and lower wages. It's all part of this trickle-down mentality that says it doesn't matter what's happening on Main Street. What really matters is what's happening on Wall Street. Wall Street's doing well, everybody's doing well. I noticed in the last 3 to 4 years we're not doing that well in Wall Street was doing well, and then that took a tumble. That's not my plan. We can continue to grow our economy in a stable and sustainable way. We can build on an economy that works for everyone. Today, we're going to do something that our Republican colleagues in the Congress don't want us to do. They love to attack the Democrats. They say for what we've done. But they really don't want to see what their plan is. I doubt any of you can tell me what the Republican re-election plan is this time. What's their platform if they take control of Congress? Let's start with inflation. Let me tell you how I think about it. I think about it the way my dad used to talk. My dad was a well-read guy. His greatest regret, he never went to college. Had to leave Scranton because when coal died, everything died with it, and we moved down to Claymont, Delaware, a little steel town at the time. But it's the way most people at home deal with these things. You talk about around the kitchen table. Do we have enough money to cover all the bills for the month and all the necessities that aren't regular bills? And if we